Good afternoon, good afternoon. It is today, Tuesday, 30th of August 2022. Fancy that. This is picking off the horror stories one at a time. There was a time this would have horrified me and I'd have said, oh my goodness, what do we do now? I've sort of got the idea what we do now. We knock out the rubbish, we put in something better. This is actually quite a worrying little horror story. This is the other side of the stone lintel that had fouled, that I replaced with all the concrete and reinforcing rods and all that sort of good stuff. Yeah, and what we're looking at, it's a very, very tough sort of stone. And as with a lot of things that are tough, it's brittle. And bearing in mind this lintel supports the weight of the internal steelwork and the joists or the beams that my bed are going to sit on. So, I don't know, I guess it's sort of vaguely important that we have a bit that's not going to go wrong. Now, interestingly, on the window opening in the wall next to it is a wooden lintel. Interesting, you know, they obviously followed the code for how much wood you have bearing weight on the stone that it sits on, because there is a code for that. I have read it, and clearly this funny bit of oak, I think it's oak, clearly it meets all of the international standards on what's required for seating a lintel, especially one that is load bearing. I may very well put a bit of oak in there. I have pieces of oak that I can cut to length and fit in. An oak lintel will last more than a fortnight, so yeah, I think that's probably a plan. Whereas a stone lintel, you're always going to be, you know, is it, will it, won't it? And I could pour a concrete lintel into it. I could do. But I think we'll go with wood. But the first thing, of course, is to get all this rubble out. Now, there are those amongst you who would get a great big mechanical jackhammer thing driven by hydraulic or pneumatic or whatever. Yeah, do you want to do that in a building where the stones are held together with mud? I'm going to do it old style, hammer and chisel, and we'll see if we can't get that all out. Who remembers what it was like when you were 5 and you had a woggly tooth that you wanted to get out? Because if that tooth came out and you put it under your pillow in the morning, the tooth fairy would have put a silver coin in its place. Well, this is the same sort of thing. There's nothing holding it in, but it ain't coming out. Yeah. Right, how did we do it when we were children with woggly teeth? We used a hammer and cold chisel. Well, there we are. That's the broken stone removed. It sits on these two stones. This one's nice and firm in place. This one is also woggly. So that one's going to have to come out and be reset before we find a nice piece of oak to make a little lintel to put in there. But it's that time of day, if you look where the sun is, it's that time of day for me to find a bit of cheese to put on a biscuit, because we have to feed the inner man too. Yeah, perhaps I will just take that out before I eat. Well, that came out very, very easily, which I expected. And just to show you what this is sat on, now this is what we call well, I say we call it torchie. It's that's a much overused word, because it could mean just a straightforward mud mortar, or it might mean a mud lime, but basically, you know, it's muck. It's just you put in mud and you set stones on it, and yeah, given time, it sort of crumbles and fouls. And then along comes a crazy Englishman who investigates it and prods it, and will render it up with show, which is somewhat more durable. But that's actually going to take quite a bit of rebuilding, which will involve mixing show and breaking up some roof tiles and making goods, and yeah. So there we are, after dinner. And one of the permanent distractions on a job like this is finding fossils in the stone. I don't know if you can see that. Can we see that? Is it light enough to see that? Oh, now I can't see a thing. Yeah, a great big mollusk shell in the stone. That's older than I am. Then we had a little excitement when the puddy cats found something to play with that didn't want to be played with. Now, I'll show you the size of my finger against this thing, and unless I'm mistaken, that is what's known as a western whip snake. It is non-venomous. If it was venomous, you wouldn't find me this close to it. But like all snakes, it is a protected species. So we're going to try and encourage small furry people that this person is protected, not to be munched.